as you say, okay, leaving Steve, Dan, one of my Death Star treaders, asks, and hello, Dan, Matt, how many of the 6,000 pages and 300 covers exist? Exist? That I would have to put in quotation marks. My consideration would be particularly with the pages in, let's say, Cerebus number 1, Cerebus number 2, probably a fair number of those pages were bought by people who went, well, okay, I'll help the kid out. He's only asking $10 a page. Here's $10 for your aardvark page. And, it just went the way of all flesh, because it's like, well, I only paid $10 for it. I didn't really buy it, because I wanted it. I bought it to try and help somebody out. It got all buckled up on the way home in the car, or one of the kids colored on it or something like that. I might as well just throw it out. And, that would not be a completely unexpected thing to have happen in 1978. Of the 6,000, how many of them does Dave possess? Well, I look at it as again, they're in the Cerebus Archive. There is about 3,700 pages in the Cerebus Archive, and about almost exactly 100 covers. So there's a higher percentage of the pages are in the off-site storage Cerebus Archive, and a smaller percentage of covers in the same location. Is Dave, quote, satisfied, unquote, with scans, or is there a reason to pursue the actual pieces? The answer to that would be, if you know what you're looking at, you would definitely far prefer looking at the original artwork if you were having to make a particular assessment about it. As we'll see a couple of questions from now when we start talking about Sean Robinson. Sean Robinson sees a lot more sharply than most of us do, and in terms of reproducibility. So definitely, if you had to have Sean Robinson telling you specific things about the Cerebus number 4 original artwork, you could tell more from looking at the original artwork than he could tell from scans of the original artwork. I would have been in that category at one time. My eyesight isn't at that level anymore, so scans are fine for me. So it's more of a, I want to make sure that I'm hanging on to the artwork for the specific purpose of people who are seeing at that level, and whatever their concerns and their focus would be 50 years from now, 100 years from now, which is very apt to be, completely different from our own, just because they will presumably have developed perceptions that are far in advance of our own that we couldn't predict, and wouldn't have any way of anticipating ahead of time. That's particularly true of the painted covers. The painted covers look very different from the scans, and very different from the reproduction, because the computer does its best to find happy and accurate compromises of this image has this much cyan in it, this much yellow, this much black, and this part has 3% more black than it does over here. You can get reasonably accurate doing that, but as soon as you see the original cover, which is, Gerhardt painted it, and Gerhardt was just trying to do the best cover that he could. I'm mixing a magenta and cyan, a little bit of this, a little bit of black and whatever, and then trying to find the color that I'm picturing in my head. This is about as close as I can get. Here's the cover that I painted. Once that went to the printer and they were photographing it and then separating it into its individual colors and making individual layers, plates out of it. Here's as close as we could get. It's not really close. It's close if you haven't seen the original, but if you have seen the original, you go, well, it's not even close. Particularly if you own the original, and you can go, no, I look at the original on my wall, several times a day, and every time I look at the printed comic book, it's like, no, this is just a rough approximation of it, which is why I tried not to sell covers, but the covers were the things that people wanted, and the covers were the things that people would pay the most for. So that situation is always going to exist. The same reason that it would be nice to say, hey, anybody that's got a painted Cerebus cover, if you're looking for a place for that to go after you die, the Cerebus Archive would be sincerely grateful about that. The odds are that's not going to happen, because that is going to be something that is going to go for the most amount of money and be the most desirable for exactly that reason. If you own the original painting for a Cerebus cover, you're the only one who is going to see how it looks. A lot of the black and white covers and painted covers that I did got stolen from my apartment when I was living over on Queen Street, which a very unhappy list of trusted people who would be the likely suspects, trusted in quotation marks. It's ex-girlfriends, somebody that I slept with and didn't keep a close enough eye on, somebody who was over for a party, a housekeeper. I had 2 or 3 housekeepers when I was there who would come in once a week. Somebody in New York, when I was doing Form and Void, and was wondering where Mary Hemingway's diary went, her handwritten diary, said, never rule out the landlord, that New York landlords tend to be barracudas. I don't know if that's a general tendency among landlords. Just, I don't make enough being a landlord of this building, so this is one of the job perks, is being able to let myself into somebody's apartment and try to figure out what can I take that they're not going to be able to trace to me. So a lot of that stuff hasn't shown up on the market. It'll be interesting to see what happens now with the prices now moving up into the low and mid 5 figures. That usually does bring stuff out of the woodwork where, okay, I swore I was never going to sell this Cerebus cover, but I can't afford to just own something that's worth $50,000. I'm barely worth $50,000 myself. So much as I don't want to turn this into cash, I'm going to have to turn this into cash, and just hope that this was at or close to the top of the market in my lifetime, because it's probably not going to be at the top of the market if you're talking open-ended.
So when you and Gerhard split the company up, he got half the artwork, right?
No. The idea was we kept the artwork jointly, and because I wasn't selling artwork, Gerhard could sell whatever artwork that he wanted, and then would compensate me for my side of the artwork. So it'd be on a case-by-case basis. If this page was all background with a tiny little Cerebus in the corner, well, okay, that's one kind of a deal. And this page over here, which is, 5 panels of Cerebus in his costume using his powers kind of thing. Well, okay, they're not buying that for the background. They're buying that for the Cerebus, so that would be a different deal. And then just, he was welcome to make any deal that he wanted with anybody. If you want to buy Cerebus artwork that Gerhard worked on, just tell him, which pages you're looking for, and he had a catalog of them. I had a catalog of them. You let me know who you sold it to and how much for, and I'll just send it out. And Gerhard definitely decided he wanted his own pages. He wanted, here are these pages. These are mine. And he basically took a number of pages, came over and went through all of the artwork and made a giant pile of pages, and said, okay, now we're square. I got these pages. The Cerebus Archive gets those pages, and we never have to revisit this question again. And it's like, well, okay, I don't think that's the best way to do it, but no, that's the way Gerhard wanted to do it, so that's the way we did it.
So, did he take any of the covers?
He took a giant pile of stuff.
Okay.
It's like I'm not gonna sit down and say, no, you can't have that one. No, you can't have that one. It's like, okay, this is I forget how long this was. This was actually 2014, 2015. So it was, a good 7 years after he had left. And it's like, okay, well, I can tell by his tone that this is how he really wants this to go. And this is really how he wants this to go. This is how this is going to go. And I think he asked, do you want to look at what I'm taking? And it's like, no, it's if you think you're entitled to it, you take it. There was he wanted to take the Cerebus trade paperback cover, and I went, no, I'm hanging on to that one. That's the first trade paperback cover. He definitely took the High Society cover. It was one of those where Sean would be actually the person to ask about it, because it's like Gerhard scanned all of the artwork that he took, and virtually all of the artwork in the archive has been scanned. There's some pages that still have to be scanned from latter days, I think it is. About half of the book or something like that, but it's not a big priority right now. So
Well, I
Sean definitely knows. These are the scans that we have. These scans came from Gerhard. These scans came from the Cerebus Archive.
I know that I had asked Sean about that one time because Gerhard was doing a sale like 3 or 4 pages, and I asked Sean, "Hey, do you have scans?" He said, "Oh yeah, Gerhard. Before Gerhard sells anything, he made sure everything was scanned." I'm like, okay, but I just asked because you're saying that the archive has about 100 covers, and I was thinking about, well, there's 300 covers, and then I went, wait, no, because Going Home in Form and Void is all the photo covers, so those covers wouldn't exist as covers.
Right. Yeah, I've forgotten that part. That's, 240? 240? Yeah, 240 to 300. So some of them are covers in quotation marks, too. It's like, okay, I did, the Spore cover, and it's got Spore and it's got the lettering, but it doesn't have the background. That's all computer generated.
Right.
So it was definitely. I think these are the best covers that I can do under the circumstances. Was the conclusion that I came to, and sort of knew right from the beginning. If you're going to sell the covers, you definitely want it to be a cover. It's got to look like the comic book, but in black and white. And it's got to have a logo on it because people want the logo on it, which is much easier to do at the stage where you're doing the pre-press than it is when you're drawing a cover. It's like the Cerebus number 8 cover doesn't have a logo on it. The Cerebus number 6 cover just says the aardvark because it's like, okay, I've got to letraset the aardvark on here, but I really don't want to do an oversized logo and get a stat done of it, which is going to be expensive, and then stick it on the cover, and then ink up to the logo all the way around. I really don't have time for that. I just want to get a cover done the fastest and easiest way to do it. But being a fan and one-time art collector, I'm going, you're going to regret this. which is not true. I would be regretting it if I was selling covers, but because they're all just in the archive, it's like, well, okay, this is how I did them at the time. This is why I did them this way. But yeah, definitely, it's you just have to check the Heritage Auctions catalogs where it's like, okay, this isn't the original logo. They got a stat of a logo from a nearby issue and put it on and made it look like it's from the original cover. But it's always more impressive when you go, wow, it's still got all of the paste ups on it. All of the word balloons are on there. All of the captions are on there. Even if the captions are almost brown because they're stats or whatever, it's wow, that's an original cover.
Well, that was Steve sent me a year or two ago. He's like, I'm going to mail you something. What's your address? So I gave him my address, and this package shows up, and I open it up, and I immediately emailed him going, this isn't what it looks like. He's like, no, it's not what it looks like. Because what was in the package was the original art to the cover of issue 80. Of the giant stone Thrunk holding up his fist to the to the reader. And it's black and white, there's no background, it's just your art. But the upper corner says Cerebus number 80, cover type thing. And it's signed, but not by you. And it says Merry Christmas, and then it's the signature that looks like a forgery of your name, but not even close. And so Steve ended up calling me, and we talked about it, and I'm like, so what is it? And he's like, the nearest we can tell, because he contacted Gerhard about it. Gerhard used to make full-size copies of the art if he thought he might screw up. So
which he always thought he was going to do. So it was sort of situation normal.
And he said there were, because you guys were on. I think if I remember the story right, it was around the time when you guys were either in Florida or Hawaii, and it was I'm afraid I'm going to screw up, so he ended up photocopying the entire issue, and this one, and it was one of those once he finished his work, and he didn't need the copies, he would just give them away to people. So apparently you guys were at a show or something, and he gave away this isn't the cover, but it's almost the cover.
Right.
And Steve got a hold of it, tracked down the provenance, because it's on real thick board too. Like, it could almost be illustration board, but it's light. It's not a heavy board. And I'm like, all right, so I have it, and it's one of those. There's that part of me that goes, if I had the money, I would commission Gerhard to do a background on the cover, but not the original. Do something completely weird and random, so when people look at it, they go, that's not right.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's, we would do the covers on the illustration board, and the way that it was reproduced at the time, the actual scanning when it was being photographed, when it got past the point where it was an upright camera that was taking the picture of it, and it became instead a computerized thing where the cover had to wrap around a drum in order to get scanned. So when Gerhard got the cover done, I would draw it on the illustration board, he would ink it on the illustration board, and then he would paint it on the illustration board. He would have to peel up one of the layers on the illustration board and take a mailing tube and basically wrap, peel up as much of the bottom of it as he could, and then hold it tight against the mailing tube, and then roll the mailing tube up the whole cover so that it came off and was now on something that could be rolled around the drum. And it's like, you have to have real confidence that this layer is on at the same density and with whatever the same adhesive is that holds these layers together throughout the whole cover. Because if there's a glitch part way up, you're going to have a giant hole in the middle of that cover that just took you a day or 2 days to ink and then paint.
And that would explain why I have a photocopy.
Depending on the cover would have been more heartbreaking or less heartbreaking, because Gerhard would go, well, the cover sucked anyway, so now I got another chance at it. Can you, just draw another one and then I'll put the background on it? But that never happened. That never happened. So, congratulations to the S172 illustration board people that they were 100% consistent on that.
I just can't imagine spending all the time and effort to draw and paint a cover and then possibly rip it into pieces so that we can make reproduction of it.
Well, you got to remember that this was a different time period. It's the same thing with all of the pages got FedExed to printing because, they were going to photograph it. I wouldn't want to get it photographed locally because people, hadn't been trained in, you got to pick up all the detail on this. And it's like we would do full-size photocopies on the office photocopier of all of the pages, and it's like, okay, one of these times they're gonna lose the artwork, and FedEx is or somebody is and we're just going to have to reproduce from the photocopies. It's going to look like crap, and people are going to say, "Ooh, why does this issue look like crap?" Because this one got lost. But it didn't. It never happened. But considering what the situation is now, where unless you really want to let artwork out of your personal custody, it doesn't have to be out of your personal custody. You scan it and send it to somebody who's got a computer that can receive it, and that's as close as you're going to get to it anyway. So you go nuts. You remaster it to your heart's content, but my physical artwork doesn't go anywhere unless I'm sending it there.
Right.
So we covered that question. I hope we've satisfied Dan, the Death Star Treader, with what we had to say on the subject there.
Oh, the last little bit of that was him asking, what was the impetus for getting the art back, and it's. I don't think so much you want the art back as I'm going, hey, if we can get all of an issue back into the archive, that would be amazing. And it was a Matt impetus, less than a Dave impetus. It was once it was, okay, we're going to break up the gang if we win, then it was, well, is Dave getting anything? And that's when you kicked in the money.
Right. Which is another one of those, I have no idea what people will be looking for. Call it the Sean Robinson side of the Cerebus intellectual property. You want to satisfy those people by keeping as many of the originals as possible, because you don't know what they will be looking for specifically 100 years from now. We may find out that there are implications of inked drawings that exist at a finer tuned level than DNA, as an example. That DNA is going to look like an elephant's foot 100 years from now, compared to, this is what we can tell about the artist just from these elements that are always going to be in his ink once we figure out what the density of his ink is. And this will tell us, an encyclopedic level of knowledge about him on the day that he did this, because it's just programmed in there. They didn't know about this back in when the Earth was still cooling back in the 22nd century, but here in the 23rd century, we can tell you all of this kind of stuff if we can get the artwork, or if we can have access to the artwork. And most of the artwork is owned by whoever are the Elon Musks of the 23rd century. There could be a whole bunch of them that just go, no, this is why I pay trillions of dollars for artwork, so that I'm the only one that finds out these things. No, you can't bring your hand scanner in and go, can I just scan over this page? It's like, no, that's my page. I've gotten a lot out of this page that I have no interest in sharing with anybody else.
Right. Okay, moving on.